The Australian Psychological Association, that represents psychologists, it has now written to the Tasmanian Law Reform Institute saying, and get this, doctors should be able to perform irreversible surgery on children under 18 to change their gender, even when the child's parents say no. Now, the association says that as long as a doctor thinks that a child can make that decision for themselves, they can get that surgery. And what's more, that association says, well, don't worry about giving the child mandatory counselling before the surgery, scrap it. It's just an unnecessary burden. Well, Professor Dianna Kenny is a developmental psychologist, and she deals with many parents whose children have declared themselves transgender, born in the wrong body, so it's said. Professor Kenny joins me now. Great to see you. Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell me, Professor, what you make of this recommendation that doctors should be able to perform this gender-changing surgery even without the parents' permission?
Well, obviously I'm dismayed and disappointed that the peak body for Australian psychologists could make such an ill-considered statement that would result in quite young children, often very immature, often with psychological disturbance, making such decisions for themselves without proper oversight. It's very disturbing.
But can we ever really say, as the association seems to suggest, that a child under 16 is capable of making a decision like this, can be mature enough?
Look, 16-year-olds vary vastly with respect to their maturity and their intelligence and their capacity to analyse very complex situations. But what we do know about this subpopulation of young people with gender dysphoria is that many of them, actually almost a majority of them, have other mental health issues, and many come, with a background of serious psychological issues such as being on the autism spectrum disorder, suffering quite severe depression, anxiety, social isolation, marginalisation and so on. And they're struggling very hard to deal with these underlying issues and then to be given the freedom to make decisions about irreversible, life-changing surgery that could seriously impact the quality of their life from that point onwards is verging on totally irresponsible.
So are you suggesting that they've got other things going on in their lives, they think their problem is that they're born in the wrong body, so to speak, and surgery will fix it, when in fact they've got these other things that surgery will not touch?
Absolutely. And to say that these young people can make the decision for themselves and declaring counselling or psychotherapy or even consultation or discussions with parents irrelevant or an unnecessary burden just defies belief.
It strikes me as really strange. Could it also be too, I sometimes wonder, and maybe I'm wrong here, you see a lot of these children. Could it in some cases be a cry for attention for a child that is in deep strife and they think, if I say this, I'm getting attention, I'm a fashionable kind of identity. Could it at all ever be that?
Well, the Australian Psychological Society fails to discriminate subgroups of children and adolescents with gender dysphoria. And what we're mainly dealing with at the moment is a relatively new presentation called rapid onset gender dysphoria. And it's had an incredible increase in the last 5 to 10 years. And in particular, young female adolescents who had never shown any sign of gender dysphoria in early childhood, suddenly declaring themselves transgender. Now, the fact that the Australian Psychological Society submission and other statements that they've made recently fail to acknowledge this new subgroup of gender dysphoria serves to really muddy the waters about what are the underlying psychological issues affecting this subgroup of young people. And indeed, your assessment is certainly one option, that young people sometimes feel disempowered or have difficult relationships with their parents, often feeling like they are not being heard. And so they have to come up with something fairly dramatic for parents to stop and listen and to accept that their child is in trouble. But we don't immediately jump to the conclusion that these young people are transgender and that mutilating surgery that's irreversible is going to resolve all of the issues that are current in that young person's life. And in fact, the children that I've been treating, and the adolescents in particular, I view this rapid onset gender dysphoria as a problem of core identity. It's not a problem of gender identity. It's an issue where the young person is struggling to find their core identity. It is a psychological issue and not an issue that can be repaired or corrected with cross-sex hormones and mutilating surgery.
We live in very strange times. Professor Dianna Kenny, thank you so much indeed for shining a light on this.
You're welcome.